On this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips, we're going to chat about the myths, lies, illusions, and truth about networking for leadership. And we'll do it with one of the godfathers of the networking world himself. So hold on, you're in for a treat. Welcome to Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty Leadership Series. I'm your host, Dov Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in, we're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, big thank you to you for being one of the over 1.5 million downloads and making us the number one podcast for Fortune 500 listeners and consistently keeping us at the top in next-gen leadership, human resources, and a bunch of other great categories. Thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. And remember, we always need your help to stay relevant, so get over to iTunes now, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. My guest today is a highly in-demand speaker, a best-selling author, and without doubt, the world's number one expert on networking. In fact, if you're a leader, I would seriously doubt that you haven't heard his name, but if by any chance you haven't, then I know for sure that you'll know the name of his organization, which is BNI. Ivan Misner is the founder and chairman of the business networking organization BNI. He is often referred to as the father of modern networking and a networking guru. He's written, would you believe it, 21 books. Guy's obviously got nothing to do. And he's a multiple best-selling author. And his latest book is Avoiding the Networking Disconnect, the 3 R's to Reconnect. So please put your hands together and welcome our guest today, the Honorable Ivan Misner. Crowd goes wild.
Thank you, Dov. I appreciate the introduction.
Welcome, my friend. So, you got your new book out. I want to talk about that. But BNI today has over 7,400, I think it was, chapters throughout the world.
7,600, but who's counting?
600, who's counting, right. And I believe it was back in 1985, when you started BNI.
Yes, I had no gray hair then.
Yeah, just a spot here and there, and that was it. Tell us why. Why did that come about? Because networking seems to be sort of across the landscape of business now. Why did you put together BNI? What was the impetus there?
In 1985, it was not. And, I'd like to tell you that I had this vision of an international organization with groups all over the world. But the truth is, I needed some referrals for my consulting practice. I was a management consultant. My doctoral degree is in organizational behavior, and I help people, in hiring, training employees. I put together a small group of people I knew and trusted, and I wanted to refer them, and I hoped that they would be willing to refer me.
Right.
And we got together every week, and we passed each other referrals. At the very first group, maybe 2 months into it, someone came who couldn't join because of a conflict. Because from the very beginning in BNI, we only took one person per profession in a chapter.
Right.
So we had this chapter. Someone came who couldn't join, and she said, "This is fantastic. I could get a ton of business out of it. Would you help me open my own group?" And I actually said, "No, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. I don't run a network." And she said, "Well, this is kind of consulting. You're helping me out." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, fine." So we opened up a second chapter, and at the first meeting of the second chapter, we had about 24 people come. 2 couldn't join because of a conflict. Both of them said, "Wow, this is great. I could get a ton of business. Would you help me open up my own group?" And I said, "No, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant." They made the same argument. I said, "Okay." At the end of a year, we ended up having 20 chapters by accident. I knew enough about marketing to understand the difference between push marketing and pull marketing.
Yeah.
Where, push marketing, you're really pushing to get clients. You're pushing, it's hard. Pull marketing is where the marketplace is just pulling you through.
Yeah.
And between Christmas and New Year's that year, I sat down, I had a few days, and I reflected. What just happened last year? Because this was not in my plan.
Right.
And I realized that I was experiencing an example of pull marketing and that I'd better pay attention. And it was at that point that I sat down and I created a plan for the organization to scale the business, to make it certainly national. I'm not sure I was thinking global yet, but certainly national. And that's when I realized we don't teach this in colleges and universities. We don't teach it anywhere.
No.
And it ended up becoming part of my doctoral dissertation, business networking. I wrote the first doctoral dissertation on business networking, and probably the very first book on business networking in the late 80s.
That's wild. So I'm trying to think, because I've been doing this a long time too. I started in '83, so I don't think there was anything like that back in those days, was there?
There wasn't.
I mean, there was just, you looked.
Nobody had written about it. It was just part of the sales process, and we wanted referrals, but nobody talked about networking as a standalone concept. The first book I wrote was in 1989, and that was the first one I had ever seen on the topic of business networking.
So let's dive into that for a minute, because I've spoken about this many times. Networking groups, and I'm not saying BNI because actually that's not what I'm referring to, but networking groups can be, let's find a way to say this, painful. Let's just use painful. You go into the room and you feel like you are fresh bait in a Shark Tank where all those people are shoving business cards at you.
Yeah.
Let's start that. What is wrong with networking today in the form that it becomes? I'm sure it wasn't your intention or even what it's about, but what is wrong with it?
Well, what's wrong with it today is what was wrong with it 31 years ago when I started BNI. Was I would go to networking events and they were being used as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity.
Right.
Hi, my name's Ivan. Let's do business.
Right.
And people would try to sell one another right on the spot. It didn't work 31 years ago. It doesn't work today.
Less today.
I wrote a book called Business Networking and Sex, Not What You Think. It's about the difference between men and women and how they network. And one of the expressions I use in there applies to both men and women, but men do it more. It's called premature solicitation.
I'm glad you added the last word.
Yeah, that's right. Which you don't want to say fast 3 times; it'll get you in trouble. No. But that's basically where you meet somebody and you try to jump right into doing business with them. There's an old expression: "It never hurts to ask." Right? You've heard that expression,
I've heard that for sure.
So people say that to me all the time, and I say, yes, it hurts to ask. It really hurts to ask if you have no relationship.
Right.
So what happens is that when you're meeting people and you're using networking as a face-to-face cold calling opportunity where you're trying to sell to people, that's when they leave the meetings and they go home and they feel like they need to get a shower.
Yeah, they've been slimed.
They've been slimed. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So to me, you want to build a powerful personal network? The foundation of everything I teach is on 3 letters. VCP. VCP, the VCP process. Visibility, credibility, profitability. Right. You first have to be visible. People have to know who you are and what you do. You then have to establish credibility, where people know who you are, they know what you do, and they know you're good at it. And only then can you get to profitability, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to give you referrals on an ongoing reciprocal basis. If you don't follow the VCP process, then you're very likely to be guilty of premature solicitation, which people hate. They don't like being sold to when they go to networking meetings. You should go to networking meetings to build relationships. That's why you're there.
In my last book, this one over here, which was called Fiercely Loyal, and one of the things I talked about in this book was the central position you should have, no matter what your official title is that you need to be a CRO. And people say, well, what's a CRO? Chief Relationship Officer. Yeah. That it's all about relationship, particularly with millennials now. You got to be building relationship. And so often in many of the networking groups that are going on, there's not the relationship. As you said, it's jamming business cards in people's hands and premature solicitation rather than... Now, I would like to share with you the process that I share with people, and you tell me what you think. Because one of the things I say to people is this. When I go to one of those, because I'm so sick of it, and I don't go very often, but when I go, people will say to me, what do you do? And I say, doesn't matter what I do. And they go, what do you mean? We'll talk about that later. And I say to them this, tell me what you need. And they say, well, what do you mean? Tell me what you need that's got nothing to do with what I do, and maybe nothing to do with anything here. Like, do you need your toilet fixed? Is your roof leaking? Do you need to find a better car? Do you need a babysitter? What do you need? What is your needs right now in your life? And they go, Oh, that's weird. Well, actually, yeah, my bathroom's leaking, and I've got to really get a problem with that. Are you a plumber? I go, nope, I'm not at all. But you know why I'm asking? They go, why? Because I have a massive group of people, all kinds of, old-time Rolodex, but a contact list. And you're here in town. They go, yeah. I say, hold on a sec. And this is what I do. I call the person I know right in front of them. I say, hey, Grant, I've got Ivan here with me, and his bathroom is leaking, and he's in the area. Do you think you could talk to him and find out if you could help him? Grant says, yeah. Here's what I do. Here's my phone. I let you take my phone, create reciprocity. I let you take my phone, have a conversation with that person, nothing in it for me, right? I mean, I say to people, how do you think people are going to respond to that? Do you think they're going to be more inclined to want to know what you do genuinely, as opposed to this is what I'm supposed to say? Is that what you're talking about?
Listen, yes. I think we both get to the same place almost identically. Your story about asking what you need is where I end up. I usually don't start there, though, because, people, for whatever reason, they got to say what they got to say. It's like Tourette's, they just got it blurts out. So they want to talk about their business. I think a good networker has 2 ears and 1 mouth and uses them both proportionately. So I try whenever possible to ask them first, tell me about what you do.
Right.
And use that as an opportunity to get them to talk. What's your target market? What area of specialty do you have? What do you love about your business? What really excites you about your business? What's new and dashing in your business? And then I'll ask a question that gets to the point where you're kind of talking about. I'll say, what are some of the challenges you have in this business? But you can't start with that question because people are like, who the hell are you and why are you asking me this question?
Yeah.
But if you get to that and you say, what are some of the challenges that you have in this? They almost always tell me a challenge they're having. And that's when I get to do exactly what you described. So yeah, we end up in the same place very closely.
So you ask them what's the challenges they're having in their business or period?
In their business, or sometimes if they're talking about their personal life, I'll go there as well. I think one of the things that women do better than men, based on my book, for what I found in my book, is that they tend to focus a little more on relational networking. They're better at it. Men tend to be more transactional in their networking. And this was based on a survey of 12,000 people we did. So it's not just Ivan's opinion. It was based on a survey of 12,000 people. We found that women were much more relational in the way they networked. For example, men were much more likely to say, hey, tell me what you do, and get right down to it. Where women were more likely to say, so tell me, Dov, how did you hear about tonight's meeting?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in on one where there was 2 women and a guy, and I walk in on the conversation, and the 2 women say, so how did you hear about this meeting? And one said, oh, my friend Janet invited me. And the first woman says, oh my God, you know Janet? I know Janet. How do you know Janet? And there's a guy, he's standing over to the side, and you could just see it in his eyes. He's like, bleed me out.
Exactly, yeah.
Why? Who cares about Janet? I want to, let's do business. And I'm sitting there thinking, actually, these 2 ladies have it right, because they're making a connection. And the connection is this third party who they both know and respect. And that's actually really smart.
Yeah.
And so the more we can make that kind of overlapping connection, the better. And you can often do it through personal stuff even more effectively than business.
Yeah. So your new book is called Avoiding the Network Disconnect, the 3 R's to reconnect. So what is the big networking disconnect?
Yeah, so
is it exactly what we just said?
Yeah, it's pretty quick, actually. I went to an event in London years ago, and there were 900 people in the room, and I said, how many of you, I wanted to test this out. I said, how many of you are here today, raise your hands, hoping to possibly sell something? 900 people raised their hands, the entire audience. I said, great, thank you, perfect. I said, now, second question. How many of you are here today hoping to just possibly, just maybe buy something? No one raised their hands.
900 sellers in a room and no buyers.
That's
Wrong
right.
room.
And that, my friend, is the networking disconnect. Everyone shows up wanting to sell. Nobody's there to buy.
Right.
And so why go? People say to me, well, why go if you're not there to sell? Well, you go to work your way through the VCP process, I believe. You create visibility with people who don't know you.
Right.
You help improve your credibility with people that do know you, and you continue to move down that profitability lane with the people that you have a strong relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
So you communicate differently with different people based on where you are in the VCP process.
So, okay, so let's just jump right into it. What are the 3 R's to reconnect?
Well, the first is it's really all about relationships. I went to an event once. It was so great. This guy, he pitched his networking presentation on the formula, the mathematical formula for success in referrals. And I thought, okay, I got to see this. Mm-hmm. So I go to his event, and it was interesting. Math is not my strength, but he had this spreadsheet, or he had this flip chart up, and he said, okay, so let's take someone in the audience, and he said, how many people are in your personal network, in your database, and and how many networking organizations do you belong to? And he's putting this all up on this flip chart. And he's like, okay, so the square root of this number divided by that number. And I'm sitting there going, I'm lost. What is he talking about? And, he's talking about the Dunbar number, which is the number of people that theoretically we can have a direct access to, divided by this number. And it's got it all up. And then he's looking confused.
Oh, that's
and he's going, it's really good, though. He's like, oh, and then he takes a pen and he runs a big red X through it. And he goes, forget about it. It's all about relationships, you guys. And that was his whole presentation, was there is no formula.
Right.
The formula is about relationships. Right. I thought it was brilliant because I got totally sucked in. People want some formula. They want the one secret to success. One of the things I've learned over the years is the one secret to success is there is no one secret.
No secret.
Yeah. It's a whole series of things. And so he talked about how important it was to develop a relationship and what some of the key characteristics of building relationships were. I thought that was brilliant. So relationships lead to referrals, and referrals lead to results. Yeah, those are the 3 R's.
I see. So, but again, for me, doing this all the years that I've done it, like you, I get out there, I'm speaking, I'm at events, I'm at conferences, I'm not always as the person on the stage, but sometimes the person in the audience, and sometimes both. And I never cease to be amazed by how people don't grasp that relationship is the core. Yep. Like, you can come up with a great close, you can come up with your great, quote, elevator pitch, you can come up with how to deliver this, you can come up with learning your physiology and how to use your tonality and reciprocity and all the persuasion techniques in the world. But the bottom frickin' line is, if you don't start a relationship, it's all over.
Right.
And why do you think it is that people don't get that? Why do you think that they struggle with that piece?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that we don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. So people just don't know. And I have a theory on why we don't teach it if you want to hear it. But I think one of the things that I've learned, one of the most important things I've learned over the last 31 years of running the world's largest networking organization, that expression, it's not what you know, it's who you know?
Yeah.
I don't think it's either. I don't think it's what you know or who you know. It's how well you know each other.
Yes.
That counts.
Yes.
Because, if you look at my database, I got some pretty big names in my database.
I would guess.
But the question is not who's in my database. The real question is, who's in my database that I could pick up the phone, make a phone call to, and that they would A, take my call, and B, do the favor that I'm asking them for.
Right.
That's what counts. It's not who you know. It's how well you know each other. Yeah. Are they willing to do something for you or to help you in some way? And so what people don't understand is that it's about building social capital.
Yes.
With others. And the social capital is actually in some ways like financial capital. The bank has this crazy concept where they want you to actually put money in the bank before you write a check.
It's a crazy idea.
It's a crazy idea, They don't like you writing checks for more money than what you have in the bank. But we do that all the time with people.
Yes.
We try to write checks before we've invested any social capital.
Right.
And we don't teach this in colleges and university. And so what happens then is that people get out into the real world. They don't know what they're doing, and they think it never hurts to ask. And so they go right to premature solicitation, and they ask for business. And it's I think, a huge mistake. Sometimes they do it out of desperation because business is tough and it's hard making ends meet. Here's the thing, though. Desperation is not referable. Desperation is not referable. And so when people come across as desperate, nobody wants to refer them. And so they don't understand it just takes time, and it takes time because you're about building those relationships. But you want to know why?
What you just said there, though, I mean, it takes time to build a relationship. So let's pretend for a minute that we've got that executive or that business person, that entrepreneur in front of us who says, listen, I am desperate here. I got to make some sales. I got to have some stuff happen. I got to have it happen soon. They want to jump ahead of that. They don't want, they don't have time to wait for the 3 months, 3 years, whatever it might be in that person's head to build the relationship. What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them, what are the ways that you're getting quick business now? And oftentimes they'll say cold calling. And I'll say, look, then if you need business next week to make ends meet, then you need to continue to cold call. But at the same time, you need to start building your referral business, which is going to take time. It's like the old Chinese proverb, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? The answer is 20 years ago.
Yes.
And the second answer is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So if you didn't do it 20 years ago, do it. Actually, it's today. Do it today. So the answer to the person who says I need business right now is then do the things that will get you some of the business right now. But it's listen. I used to train teams of people how to cold call.
Right.
I hated it. I was good at it, but I realized that if I never had to do another cold call for the rest of my life, I'd be happy.
Sure.
And so you got to do what you got to do to get to do what you want to do. But at the same time, you should be working towards building a referral-based business, which is way easier, a lot less stressful, much more pleasurable. But it takes time. If you're expecting networking to be a get-rich-quick scheme, it's the wrong technique.
Right. What do you think is we talked about 7,600 chapters worldwide. What is it that you think made BNI or continues to, because, 85 is like 95, 2005, 2015. So over 30 years, we have seen companies drop off the Fortune 500, off the Fortune 50 in 30 years, right? Disappear. What is it that you think has made that formula work and still work 30 plus years later?
31 years. And we have 31 years of consecutive growth in the organization. There are very few.
That alone is magnificent, right? Not just growth, but consecutive growth. And that includes 2008, 2009, 2010.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Literally 31 years of consecutive growth where there's no year that was down from the previous year. So the answer to that question, I think, is several things. Let me give you a couple of specifics and then really the big picture. A couple of the specifics would be you've got to, if you want to scale a business, it's very important that you understand what I call the leaky bucket theory of education. So when I teach somebody how to do something, some of the stuff leaks out. Some of the information leaks out. When they teach someone else, more information leaks out. So the more you can plug those holes by having consistent training and education, manuals, systems in place, the more successful the business will be. So we were fanatics about writing everything down and developing training materials to go with it. The second thing is that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
You got to create a world-class culture for your business. And for us, our culture is predicated on the philosophy of giver's gain.
Right.
That if I give business to people, I'll get business in return. Really healthy culture, and it helps to fight that issue of premature solicitation, because you got to understand that you're there to give business. I think that's really important. In a big picture, and I think this is where businesses really go wrong, I think you want to be successful. If you want to be successful at building a scalable business, you have to do 6 things 1,000 times. Not 1,000 things, 6 times.
Yeah.
And what most businesses do is they're going for that 1,000 things 6 times. Yeah. They don't do, they get caught up. I keep this here for when I do presentations for regions. They get caught up with the bright, shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
It's like, here's a bright, shiny object. You should try this. And so they go, oh, that looks good. Let's try that. And they do it for 6 times. It doesn't work. And then they try some other bright, shiny object and some other bright, shiny. You want to be successful. You talk to somebody who has achieved success. You have them as a mentor, or you listen to their ideas, and then you choose that and you do it 1,000 times consistently. That's the way you achieve success. And that's why BNI is where we are.
But that's, right there. We are, we talk about ADD, but we are an ADD society, right? Everything facilitates ADD. I don't care if you've got it or not.
Yeah.
You live in a society and a system that sets you up for it, even if you're an incredibly focused person. So it's like, huh? What? Huh? Oh, squirrel.
Yeah.
So there's always some distraction.
Right.
And not only, and now in this information age with online and etc., not only a distraction, but another brilliant idea. And here's a guy who made $1,000 in 20 minutes. And here's somebody who built $1 million business in 4 months. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Especially for somebody who's in that place of desperation. But I think that if we sort of get it in there and we boil it down, you got to go, okay, if there's one skill set, I've said this for years, and you correct me if you think it's differently. But I say, if there's one skill set you got to have, it's relationship. It's it. I think you need the other stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not devaluing any of that. But if you don't master how to do relationship, if you don't master how to connect with people and actually give a shit about people,
right?
I don't care how many great techniques you got. I don't care how many manuals you wrote. It's all over Red Rover.
It is. And as long as you understand that networking is more about farming than it is about hunting, that it's about cultivating those relationships, you're going to do well. And that means you need to have a lot of touch points.
Yes.
A lot of opportunities where you're touching somebody, connecting with them. You said it early on in the conversation. You said, you want to find some way to help that person you're talking to. So you want to build that relationship. One of the ways to expedite the relationship is to invest in that social capital as early on as possible by helping that person in some way. I'll give you a great example. There's a gentleman I know named Alex. Alex is a good friend. And we are both members of an organization. He reached out to me one day and he said, hey, Ivan, I've got a really interesting idea. And he ran this idea by me for something on a website. And it was a good idea. And I thought, okay, here it comes. Here's the pitch. Now he's going to sell it. And I said, so how can I help you, Alex, with this? And he's like, no, listen, I think it's a great idea. And if you want, I'll set it up for you. And I said, well, we don't have a budget set up. He said, no. This is a simple thing. I can do it and knock it out really easy for you. I just want to do something because, I think we have some synergies together and I'd love to do that for you. I'm like, okay, all right. And he did.
Right.
No strings attached. He did this little thing and it worked out reasonably well. And then every 2-3 months, Alex would reach out to me and he'd give me an idea here and give me an idea there. After 2 or 3 of these conversations, I was like, Alex, what can I do for you? He's like, no, I don't need anything. I'm good. And he just kept investing in the social capital.
Yeah.
He did it for a year. For a year, he would call me every couple of months. And I've been thinking about you, and I have this idea, and I have that idea. In about a year, a little over a year, he calls me up one day and he says, hey, Ivan, I have a favor to ask you. I said, stop. The answer is yes. What do you need? He said, I haven't even told you what it is. I said, Alex, you have been investing so much in this relationship. You know me well enough. I can't imagine you're going to ask for something that I wouldn't be okay with.
Right.
And so the answer is yes. Tell me what I'm going to be doing. And he told me it was easy. It was so easy for me to do. I was happy to do it. It was a big deal for him, but it was easy for me.
Yeah.
That's the way you build a relationship. he invested and invested and invested so that when he wanted to write a check, I would have doubled it.
Right.
But we don't do that.
No.
No, we just want something from people. And then we don't understand why they're not willing to give it to us, especially if we don't know them.
And I think I know the Alex you're talking about. And if I do, he's a very good guy. I like him. I've known him probably about 20 years, too.
Alex Mandosian.
Yeah,
that's Alex.
I met Alex about 20 years ago, and actually we were at a wedding together last year, and he's always been a very kind and generous person. I like Alex very much.
Yeah. Me too. And he certainly walks the talk.
Yeah, he does. He does indeed. You, as I said at the beginning, you're known as a sort of the father of modern networking.
Yeah, I'm glad they're not calling me the grandfather of modern networking.
No, I'm not going to do that to you. No matter, even though you have the silver hair, I won't do that to you because I'm sure we're in the same age bracket, so it's okay. And I am a granddad of 4, so it's okay.
Of 4,
4.
Good for you. I just turned 60, and I'm not a grandfather yet. So
really?
All I have are grand dogs.
Well, I was a granddad very young. My eldest grandson was 22 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I was 7 when I had my first child, and I was 14 when I became a granddad. Yeah, so not so much. Anyway, as I said, you're known as the father of modern networking. Yeah. However, many folks don't know that you studied directly with one of the fathers of modern leadership, with Warren Bennis. Tell us what it was like, because a lot of our audience are very into leadership. They've read this person, they've listened to stuff, they've watched. Tell us what it was like for you. How did having Warren Bennis as one of your teachers impact you?
Well, listen, Bennis was a brilliant. He passed away about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Absolutely brilliant man. He was very tough as a professor. He was on my doctoral committee. And one of the things I learned was, so if any of your listeners or viewers are thinking about getting a doctoral degree, never put a world's leading expert on your doctoral committee for a topic that you want to be an expert in, because there's no answer that will be satisfying to them. He ripped me apart. But what was really funny was I met him years later, probably 15, 20 years later, it was at a storytelling event, real small group of people, storytelling event. And he was there and he looked at me and he said, "We've met before." And I said, "Yes, Dr. Bennis, you were on my doctoral committee." And he said to me, never forget this stuff. He said, "Was I mean to you?"
Really?
He did. He said that. I said, well, Dr. Bennis, you were pretty tough. And he said, "Let me apologize." He said, "I'm so sorry." He said, "I hate being on those doctoral committees because it's like boot camp. Mm. You're supposed to put these young men and women through their paces, because if they can't stand up to the rigor of the intellectual content that they're supposed to be defending, then you can't give them the degree." And he said, I hate doing that. And he said, I always feel so bad afterwards. I had a whole different view of this man after that.
Sure.
And he and I stayed in touch for years after that. And we went out to dinner a couple of times. I got to know him on a personal level. Brilliant man, wonderful guy, incredible ideas. There were 2 things that I really learned from him that I use a lot. One is the concept of contextual intelligence. Yes. Was a concept that I got from him. Contextual intelligence. Yeah. That you really have to understand the context of the issue in order to know how to lead your team out of a problem. The second, and I love this, is adaptive capacity. That that leadership is all fine and good, but if you do not have a capacity to adapt, that whatever leadership style you have is going to fail. And he really called it. I brought him in to speak at a university. I'm on the board of trustees for a university in Southern California, University of Laverne, and he was speaking there. And we had a new president who was just starting, and he said, "Have most of you met this president?" To an auditorium of hundreds of people, and they're like, "Yes, she's fantastic, isn't she? He said. They said, yes, she's great. She's really well prepared. She's going to come in on day one and have a plan, and it's all going to go well, right? And we're all like, yes. He's like, you're all crazy. He told us you're all crazy. If you think for 1 minute that her plan is going to be executed perfectly, you're all nuts. Because in the first month, something's going to happen that's going to throw her plan into a tizzy. And the real question is, what is her adaptive capacity?
Yeah.
How will she adapt to that problem? Dove, he called that. He had a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, the first month she was there, one of the major schools lost their accreditation.
Whoa.
And it wasn't really under her watch. It was the previous. But she was there like 2 weeks, and they were not accredited. They lost it. And so she, it's like everything else had to get put on hold. And she had to adapt to that problem. And she did it like a trooper. But these are two concepts I was taught by Warren Bennis that really hit home for me: contextual intelligence and adaptive capacity. By the way, next week I get to meet John Maxwell.
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
John's organization named me one of the top 10 leaders in the U.S. So I'm going to his event in Orlando, and I have a chance to meet John directly.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Oh, well done. Yeah, I love both of those things. I tell a story about contextual intelligence because I also, one of the things I've said about it is it's a way to remove your own judgment as well. So one of the things around it, I tell this, like my business partner back in Australia, Phil, started dating this girl who I really didn't have a lot of time for because she was, let's how do you say this nicely? She seemed to be thick. That's the nicest way I can put it. She seemed to be a bit thick, and it was really difficult to have a conversation with her. And my business partner, Phil, was really bright, very creative, and a deep thinker. And him and I would have these deep philosophical, I'd studied all these deep philosophy and psychology and quantum physics, and he was into the mystical stuff. I mean, we had these great combos, and she'd be around, it'd be like talking to wallpaper. I mean, it was so difficult.
You're brutal.
Oh, yeah, and that's exactly how I felt, right? So I was away, and I came back, and we were supposed to stay with them for the weekend. And I come, and Phil being Phil wasn't there. So I'm left with her. And I've got to go in. I got nowhere else to go. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be painful. And I walk in, and on the living room is this mural. And I look at this and I go, and it's Dali-esque, and that's my favorite artist. Salvador Dali? Salvador Dali, yeah. I love Dali.
Oh, yeah, I've got a Salvador Dali piece. Yeah.
Oh, I am coming to your house. Watch out.
I've got it from what is it called? It's from the Inferno series.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'd love to see that. I love Dali. So I get to, and there's this Dali-esque mural, and I said, wow, that is awesome. Who did that? She says, I did. I go, really? She goes, yeah. Do you want to see the other one? You have another one? Sure. I go in the bathroom, and all over the bath and up around, I mean, it's magnificent. Well, I'm an artist. My art was in galleries by the time I was 9, 10 years old. I now have a conversation with her about art, about creativity. Yeah. And guess what? She's not thick. She's freaking brilliant, but she doesn't think in the way of logic and rationale. Right. She thinks in high creative. So the context of her intelligence, I judged her on my context. And that was only the context I was in at the time, rather than finding out what her context was. And I think that this is one of the great skills in relationship building is find out the context of somebody else's intelligence. Because in the words of Einstein, if I judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then everybody's an idiot. Yeah. And so it's that understanding that there's a context to everybody's intelligence. Yeah. And it was like, for me, that changed me around. That was 30 years ago. It changed me around because like, okay, now I get it. Don't be.
That's actually a fantastic story, Doug. I mean, it really is. And I think it illustrates how there are people sometimes that we meet that we don't think are smart, or they're not good enough, or they're not whatever. And so we don't give them time or attention. And we've all been guilty of that. I have. And how you can't do that too quickly. You got to really, it helps to get to know them a little bit better. You know who I really respect? This is a little off topic, but I'll bring it back. I really respect Richard Branson.
Oh yeah, me too.
I've had an opportunity to spend twice a couple of weeks with him, a week with him twice on 2 occasions, so a couple of weeks total, and have noticed how incredibly effective he is at networking with people at all levels of an organization.
Yes.
I mean, just amazing. The first time I saw it was he was actually giving us a tour of his new island, and not Necker, but Mesquite Island. And so he's walking us around the island, and he says, "Could you excuse me for a moment?" And he steps away, and he's talking to these 2 guys with sledgehammers, knocking down a house, 1-story house. Now, Dov, I don't know about you. I've used a sledgehammer on a wall. That's real work.
That's hard work. And if you're doing it on a tropical island?
On a tropical island in
whole
the heat,
nother level.
that is real work. The kind of work I do is easy compared to that.
Right.
So he's knocking us down. And I kind of like walked on over just so that I could hear what was being said. And Branson walks up to this guy with a sledgehammer. And he said, he knew one of them, said hi, went to the other one, he said, hi, I'm Richard, shook his hand, and he said, I really appreciate the work you're doing here. He said, I know it doesn't seem like important work, but let me explain. We want to bring in more equipment so that we can dredge this bay out. And then what we want to do is we want to bring in caterpillars and larger equipment so that we can start building facilities and buildings here. And then we want to go up the mountain and build buildings there. And we can't do any of that until this house comes down. And so although it seems like a lot of work, we can't do anything else until this is done. And it can only be done by hand because we can't bring in the equipment to do it until that's done. And so I just wanted you to know how important it was what you're doing. Wow. This guy was he was the equivalent of a day laborer at minimum wage. Branson's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Why did he have to tell him all that? He didn't.
No.
But the fact that he recognized the worth that he was bringing to the work that needed to be done, I went to school on that.
Yeah.
I went to school on that. And I think the more we can do things like what you're saying, where look for somebody to see if they have talents in other areas, that's powerful. And that's the way you build a relationship, not trying to sell somebody, but asking and talking and digging and finding out about them.
But, that's a fantastic story, because what I love about that is, again, this context thing, right? We see the world in our context. Yeah. And what Branson had the ability to do there was to see the world, certainly in his own context of the whole mountain and what they were going to do, but to relate that context to the other person and put their world in his context and his world in their context. That is beyond outstanding. That is amazing. And if we could learn that skill alone, what a transformation of us as leaders. Outstanding.
Absolutely. It's one of the things I really respect about his ability to interact with people at all levels of an organization.
Amazing. What would you say is one of your most core beliefs about leadership?
I think there are a number of things. I think for me personally, leadership was an exercise in mathematics.
Okay.
So my goal was to create an organization of thousands of chapters on every populated continent in the world. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? The only way, I can't do it. No. I'm one person. I could work 7 days a week, 20 hours a day and never accomplish it. So for me, my role as a leader was to create leaders. Now, everyone's role is different. It depends on where you want to scale your business. I wanted to scale my business globally, and in order to scale it globally, it became a math problem.
Right.
how do I create leaders to create groups?
Right.
And for me, it was things like understanding the leaky bucket theory, and having that training and materials, doing 6 things 1,000 times, education, teaching culture. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, creating core values that were really powerful, creating a vision statement that everyone could, if everyone in an organization is rowing in the same direction at the same time for the same purpose, you can beat your competition every day of the week.
Yes.
And so these were the things that, for me, were a core to being a good leader, was to leading, not only leading by example, but creating leaders and teaching leaders how to lead. That was my focus. Does that make sense?
Tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you, about your book, your new book, or your many books, your blog, whatever way they can reach out to you. And of course, if they want to bring you in to speak, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I do presentations for organizations all around the world. And so if you want information on BNI, our website's bni.com. We're in 65 countries all around the world. And I have a blog, IvanMisner.com. That's IVAN Misner, MISNER. Tons of, I've got, I think, 9 years worth of content. One of my very first blogs, by the way, was on Necker Island with Richard Branson.
Oh, is that cool?
It was like my 5th blog up there from 2007. So IvanMisner.com is a great place to get a lot of free content. My latest book is Avoiding the Networking Disconnect, which is available on Amazon.
Very cool. It's been great having you here. I hope you'll stick around while we say goodbye, and I'm going to come back to you at the very end. But, I think that this has been powerful and important for a lot of people to really grasp. You've really shared some gems. And I will say this to every one of you as you watch this again. Please don't watch this. Please don't listen to this. Use it. I know we listen to podcasts and we watch podcasts while we're doing other things because we are the ADD society. But take the time to go back and do it again. Take some notes on it and consider what you're going to put into action. And when you've done that, please reach out to Ivan and tell him what you got out of this program. Because, he's taken an hour out of his time. And believe me, I know if you wanted to hire him for an hour, you wouldn't get it for free. So, you've gotten some real gems here. And I really want you to let him know that you appreciate that. And if you are truly serious about embracing the kind of positive disruption that builds a culture, that develops the next generation of leaders, not only into who they need to be, but who they want to be, while becoming evangelical about your organization and generating a 10x engagement, reach out to me through fullmontyleadership.com. fullmontyleadership.com. And remember, I have a gift for you. Instead of at $197, it's in beta. So you can now get my Matrix program, Matrix for Authentic Leadership. So go to Matrix, like the movie, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and you can get the Full Monty Leadership Matrix and take you over the 5 categories of authentic leadership and discover for yourself where you're really at in your authentic leadership. I want to thank you for joining us here at Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty series. Again, I'm your host, Dov Baron. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And remember, we always need your help to stay relevant. So please get over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And until next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about how you can build deep, lasting relationships.